So we are very blessed and pleased to have David Matthew Brown here today as our speaker, our guest speaker. He is a speaker, author, facilitator, and healer. He devotes his time to sharing a fresh and unique message of transcendence, unity, and spiritual healing. As the former host of Inside Out, David was blessed with the opportunity to interview an impressive roster of guests, including Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Don Miguel Ruiz of the Four Agreements, that's one of our favorites, Marianne Williamson, and Byron Katie. He has spoken at many Unity churches throughout California, and some of his other more notable speaking engagements include the Los Angeles Church of Religious Science, Warner Brothers, Sony, Paramount, Nike, and the United Nations of Los Angeles. He has been consulted as an expert and interviewed on a wide variety of radio and television programs, and has appeared in print in Unity Magazine and the Huffington Post, to name a few. We are always blessed and grateful to have David Matthew Brown with us, so let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Is it on? Is it on? Are we good?
Yeah, you're good.
Good. Excellent. So I finished a camp that I've been working at for 8 weeks, and on Monday we had all the stuff we had to move out of the campus into a truck. And it's all on the blacktop. We have this massive U-Haul truck, and it looks like it's not going to fit in there. And so one of the guys comes over to me and he goes, "David, I need you to go inward and listen to that voice right now. Do we need to get another truck?" And it was an interesting question because when your eyes are looking at that, it is limited. So your eyes are going, this is not going to work, it's not going to fit, how's this going to fit in the truck? Although my inner voice was saying, no, we're going to make this happen. So long story short, not only did it happen, we still had more room in the truck. It was amazing. And so what I learned from that experience, and it was a great reminder for me, and a reminder for all of us here, is what we see is not the truth. It's not the full truth. It's a perspective. It's limited. And so sometimes what we need to do is close our eyes and go inward and listen to that silence. Listen to the stillness. And yeah, you're going to hear the voice, those different voices, the noise. You're going to hear a lot of things. But when we talk about affirmative prayer, to me that means a firm stance. And what do we take in a firm stance in? We're taking a firm stance that what I'm looking at, if I'm looking at fear or violence or hate or injustice, what I'm looking at is not who I am. What I'm looking at is a limited perspective of what I'm being shown. So how do I take a firm stance? I go inward and I quiet down and I begin to remind myself of what the truth is. And I begin to deny that which is not the truth. I am not made in hate, right? I am not made in injustice. There are no enemies at hand. The only thing that is here that is real is love. God is love, so that is the only thing that is here. Now, what's brilliant about love is that love doesn't deny what's happening. It doesn't turn itself away from it and say, God has this. And I think and feel like that's been the old paradigm. So it's a lot easier for people to walk away from situations sometimes when they're called to speak up. Whether that's at work, whether that's at school, whether that's with family, whether that's with friends. Most people have been taught, well, God has this. But they forget that you are the extension of God. That right where you are, you're being called to speak from that space. So what's brilliant about love is that love is calling us all out right now. It's calling us out of the space where we're so used to the noise. We're so used to the superficiality of life. And love is bringing us deeper right now. It's like any great flight. When you see a little bird is born, and it can't fly, doesn't even understand what the wings can do. So the mom goes out and gets it food, it brings it back. It's nourishing the young bird. Then the bird starts to get strength and confidence, and so the bird one day sits on the nest and decides, well, let's see what this thing's about. See my mom do it, and just falls all the way to the ground and gets up. The mom gets the bird, brings it back up to the nest, and it continues this process of falling down and getting up. And what is it doing? It is learning how to do what is natural for it, which is to fly. That's natural. Now, if the bird falls and the mom comes down there and says, you're not good enough, you can't do this, you're not strong enough, your wings aren't good, it's being taught something that's not true. So many of us have been taught something about ourselves that isn't true. And we're so used to it that we walk around in that state. But it's just a state of mind. That has nothing to do with who we are. Because who we are doesn't have to be anything. Who we are doesn't have to search or seek or prove or get applause or any of that stuff. Because who we are is love. Who we are is love. So now you have this baby bird, it's up on the nest, and then one day it jumps and it glides. And it's like, woo, this is crazy. This is amazing. And then it falls. But it's gone a little bit farther until kind of the fourth stage of the whole process, and it flies out in the sky, and it looks at its mom, dad, and says, I have to go now. And that parent goes, okay, you can go off into this world. I trust that you know who you are, and you can handle this. So we all go off into the world. We go off into the world knowing that God is with us. However you see God and are with God, you know that some people say that God is goddess, which is wonderful, and God is a man. It's none of those things. It is the all that is. And that all that is what we all dwell in. And sometimes we forget. And so here this bird goes out into the world like we go out into the world, knowing who and what it is and whose back that it has. So we stand in a firm stance in God, knowing that love is all that there is. We stand in that, and we know that, and we claim that here at Unity. And our practice is, when we leave this door, to remind ourselves that when we are watching the news, or we are watching things that are unfolding behind us, and that voice comes in and goes, there's no hope, there's no hope, nothing's going to go right, my life isn't going right, and it starts to panic, that we are able to become aware of that and go, I see you, and I'm going to know this for myself right now, that right where I am, God is. That nothing can stop me. That right where I am, all is possible. That who I am is possible. Why? Because I've been brought to this earth to love. And love is so massive that people forget about that, and they have these romantic ideas and concepts of what love is. So people believe that love is passive. That love is just kind of like la la la, and like it runs around and it's gleeful, and that's a part of it. But love is so strong that it is not movable. You can't move love. So every time you're moved by something unlike love, you got to go back to your practice and stand firm in the truth, because the truth doesn't move. The truth is quiet. It doesn't really have a lot to talk about. Right? Someone comes up to you, they tell you a story, and you go, oh, wow, yeah, I believe them. And then there are people that are endlessly telling you the same story. It's color-filled, and there's action, and there's people, and there's helicopters, and it's traumatic, and it's all this stuff, and you're like, and you get caught up in it. And you go, wow, that's amazing. And then you stop and you go, wait, what happened? Because the truth is pretty simple. God is simple. Love is simple. There's nothing complex about love. Fear looks complex. Fear walks around confused. Here's a state of fear. What am I going to do with my life? What is my purpose? I need clarity. I need to find God. Give that all up and you'll be in God. You can't find God by looking for God, because God is right here. The mind doesn't get that, because the mind likes to be preoccupied with everything else, and then once it finds it, it can tell everybody that it found it. But you're already in it. You're in love right now. And the realization of that will allow you to find your wings so you could fly again. Because you're here to fly, all of you. Every single one of you in this room was born to fly in love. The same love that when you fall, it's still there. It doesn't condemn you, doesn't judge you, doesn't say that what you did was wrong, and how could you have done that, and you're not being what I want you to be. There's no control. That the magnitude of unconditional love that God has for all of us is so amazing that once we begin to let go of this idea that love is this controlling thing and it judges and it condemns people and puts them down, and that's right, we will move away from the insanity and we will stand in the sane. And the sane is simple. Life is simple. There's something very beautiful about being yourself without having to be something to gain recognition. Without having to be something. Everybody wants to be something because inside they think they need to change something. And because people want to change something, they believe that they have to be something. But do you understand how that's a sense of worthlessness? Because if you stand in who you are is brilliant. And then the innate mission that you have on this planet just innately happens. And it doesn't care anymore about what you're trying to be, because you don't have to try to be anything. All you're called to be is yourself. And you're not here to be perfect. Although there's a perfect energy in you that we're connecting with, you are not here to be perfect. You're not here not to make mistakes. You're not here to control everybody and make everybody do what you want them to be, and then you can hang out with them. That's not love. Someone posted on my social media the other day when I was talking about that, love is all there is. And I said, with that, it accepts everything. So this person posted, no, love isn't all there is. I'm going to stand in my frustration and my anger and like start naming off the stuff. Yeah, but love accepts that. Love accepts your frustration. When you're watching a child being birthed, and you're watching a woman go through that magnificent space, it's not easy all the time. There are some people where it's easy, but there are a range of emotions and things going through the body, and then the baby comes. And everybody in the room's like, oh, there's so much awe because we just witnessed something so amazing. So love is birthing itself on this planet right now, but it doesn't look that way. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like you want it to feel. So we're throwing tantrums because inwardly we know it's happening, but we want to stick to what we thought we were. But what we thought we were isn't working because it's limited. And so now we're coming back into our worth and our love and our compassion, and it's strong, and we've had enough. And there's a part inside of us that's just like, yes, this is who I am. I'm love. Holy cow, I'm love. I'm it. Holy cow. And then you feel the immensity of it. And you stand in the immensity, and it's overwhelming. And then anything that is unlike that falls away, and we cry, and we let it go. Because we have the realization that we are love, and for so long, we've played the part of fear. But fear was only showing us how much love we are. Fear was pushing us to bigger parts of love. Fear is pushing you beyond your comfort zone all the time. That's why you have to go right into it. I can't do that. Go do it. What? I'd much rather just talk to you about it than have to do it. That's the brilliance of fear. Fear is love. But the only way it's going to get your attention is to bring fear into your life. Except if your life is in danger, that's different. But we know, we innately, the mind will quiet when you're in a state of danger, and you'll know what to do. So let's put that stuff aside, because I think we're all smart people to realize that that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the fear that's like, I want to leave my job and go follow this thing inside of me that's pushing me. So rather than sitting at home and going, I shouldn't do that, I have this, I have that, you go do it. And before you know it, your whole life opens up. So fear is constantly pulling you to a place you don't want to go. And why is that important? Because as you wake up in the fullness of being human and the fullness of who you are, you'll realize that inwardly, psychologically, there's no security. You may have to watch this video again and forward it to what I just said. And sit with it in your meditation. Because your mind probably doesn't like what I just said. Because it's trying to justify it. I'm not talking about physical security at a home, where you pay your rent, your bills, and you're surviving. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking that in the realization of love, in the flight of love, you'll discover that it's scary and exciting because it's an aliveness. You're constantly alive. Because in the state that most people are in right now, they're in a state of death. They're dying. There are people dying inside right now because they're not alive. They love the noise. Everywhere you go, there's noise. You go to a cafe, they're playing music. You go to a restaurant, there's music. You go to the store, there's music. You turn on your car, there's music. Everywhere that people go is noise, and the truth is silent. And she invites you in. And she doesn't try to impress you. She doesn't care where you go. She'll always be there. That's the brilliance of truth. That's the brilliance of you. And as you begin to deepen and start to join in the flight of love, you will realize that there is no higher self or lower self. You're talking about you, but you forgot about it. You were so separated from yourself that you thought there was this higher state, this higher being, but you forgot that what you're really talking about was yourself. And what you're really saying to yourself is, I'm praying to myself right now so I can wake up. But in your prayer work, you went, higher self, give me the answer. And what you're saying is, give myself the answer. Divine that I am, let me remind myself right now and remember, by letting go of all the stuff that I thought I was, walk in the state of love. And love, we've seen it on many images throughout history. Sometimes love stands in front of an army tank when everybody else won't do it and says this isn't right, but just stands there. We have the example of Jesus standing in front of Herod. Herod had his big party, and he said, here's the magician. Give me a miracle. And he starts just putting him down in front of everybody. He says nothing. And because he says nothing, Herod's got to hear himself, and now he's getting agitated. And he goes, send it back to Pontius Pilate. Because he doesn't want to see himself. Because now, in the state of love, when you stand in that truth, the people around you have to start seeing themselves. So when we listen, we are aware of ourselves. What's going on inside of ourselves as we're listening. And then from the listening comes the thoughts. Many of you, I think there's a couple of you that are new, and most of you heard the story, but I'll share it again. And then I'm going to explain to you why I'm sharing the story for the flight of love, because I feel like this is important. So many of you know that about 16 years ago, I choked on a chicken bone and almost died. So there was like a good 4 minutes where it was just completely dark inside, but it was infinite peace. So when I would share that story with people that I died, and the last thing I said to myself is, I am ready. Now, at the time, I was anxious, worried, a full-time working professional actor, made all my money in acting. But I was always worried about the next job. That was my life. Choked on the chicken bone. I said to myself, I'm ready to go. And in that moment, I was like, what? Like, it made no sense. I left this planet, this space. There was no body, there was no story, there was no family, there was no any of it. None of it existed. I was in just a infinite peace. So years later, I began to share this story. And people would always ask me, well, what about the light? Wasn't there white light? Wasn't there angels and green lights? And weren't you flying over forests? And I couldn't explain it. But there's a part of me, if I'm honest with myself, that felt a little bit dejected, like my experience didn't matter because I didn't have the Las Vegas show. Right? There wasn't all the glitz. There wasn't slot machines in heaven. I wasn't, you know. But as I sat with that, I began to sit in darkness in my meditation with my eyes open. And I wanted to confront darkness. And then I started to feel comfortable in it. And then I started to really feel good in it. And then I realized that this darkness that people talk about isn't bad. That it's the unknown. Death is the unknown. Right? So really what we're talking about is, when we talk about light and darkness, really what we're talking about is the unknown, and the light is the known. That's it. But if we can remove those labels, we will begin to see that what we call darkness and evil has moved into our physical lives. That when we see someone that doesn't have the right skin color, that instantly our mind triggers to something else. That when we go to a movie and we see the evil, it's always darkness. And yet, what we're really talking about in our own inner world is the unknown and the known. So we really need to start looking at the labels and using some transformation and new language into the way in which we see love. I bring that up because what if, this is just a what if, you could sit with it and see if it makes sense for you during the week in your own meditation and prayer work. What if it was all God and it was all good? Now that's tough. Some people have been through a lot of difficult things, physical activities, criminal activities. That's another thing that you would have to sit with. I'm talking about in our everyday life. What if it's actually true that God is love? And that what you're seeing is this dreamlike state that people call illusion, or they put all kinds of words on it. It doesn't really matter. But our job is to be aware of it and say, wait a second. If here at Unity, in all these different religions and spiritual practices, we tell everybody that love is all there is, we need to walk it. So if you're seeing fear right now, and you're seeing tremendous amounts of hate, and you're seeing separation and everything, wonderful. And with that, know that it's all good and it's all God, because there is something bigger happening. There's a birth happening with all of us right now. And in a birth, it gets crazy. It's chaotic. It's emotional. It's loud. It's, and you don't know what's happening. After a while, you're just kind of lost. And then the baby happens, like I brought up, and the bird starts flying, and you go, wow, this is magical. Love is magical. Because love takes you so far past your own thoughts and superficiality to open you up to the beauty that you are. Love is breathing each of us right now. You don't have to think about your breath, but you might be, because you're thinking a lot. That love is so profound that the psalm that was read today was by David. And I'm going to leave you with this. David was a shepherd, as many of you know. So the Psalms are David's prayers to God. So when you read Psalms in the Bible, that's David singing to God, like, I'm in trouble right now. Where are you? Sound familiar? Things are going wrong on the planet. Help me. What's going on? Help me. And then he has a realization. God is my protector. God is my source. God is my supply. God is everything to me, everywhere I go. And what happened? God took a shepherd and made him a king. God is taking you and making you king and queens right now in love. And a king and queen sees fear and decides not to take it on because they know who they are. And when you know who you are, you begin to walk on this planet in love. You begin to move in love. You begin to let love have its way with you. So that is the invitation for this week. Let love into your life. Let love love you. You are love. Walk in it, move in it, speak in it, stand in it. Do not be moved. And if you are, stand in affirmative prayer, which is a firm stance in God. Sound good? Cool. Let's go into meditation. Adam?
It is a Vegas show.
I know, I feel like it right now. It is a Vegas show. Adam and I wrote this together. It's called meditation.